welcome to Saturday Night at the Movies, the podcast that celebrates classic, cult, and current films and the people that made them, and many other aspects of pop culture. I'm your host, Steve Rubin. Our producer is Ben Shrewsbury, and our signature theme was composed by Greg Lerhoff. Here it's always Saturday night, and our mission is to chronicle film and pop cultural history one memory at a time. Tonight, our guest is actor, producer, director Jack Lucarelli, an indie filmmaker with the scars to prove it, and whose most recent film is the cool, atmospheric desert horror western Silent Thunder. Welcome to Saturday Night at the Movies, Jack.
Thank you, Steve. Glad to be here.
Indie filmmaking reminds me of what they used to say about elephants. It's kind of an endangered species. The fact that you can get films made in this crazy marketplace is a great credit to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's against all odds. I think there was a movie once called Against All Odds.
Jeff Bridges and what was his name? I know the film. It was actually a remake of a Robert Mitchum film with Jane Greer, and I'm forgetting the title of that one. Did you grow up in a movie-going family? Did you guys like to go to the movies when you were little?
Yes, I go way back. I'm kind of a relic in the business, and I was born and raised in LA and down in a place called Frogtown. And walking distance was the Arroyo Theater. It was 25 cents. And my brother and I, my younger brother, we used to walk over the river here in LA and to the Arroyo Theater. And you'd get two movies for the price of one, plus a newsreel, which was World War II going on, or the Korean War, and two or three cartoons. And you'd spend the entire day in there. And for me, when the lights go out in the theater and that screen lights up, you forget everything else that's going on in the world. I got lost up in it. Did I have a desire? I didn't. I might as well have been 20 million miles away from Hollywood. But my father was a cop, a highway patrol officer, and he stopped a guy named Solly Biano, who in those days, a casting director, was the second in command of a studio. Solly worked for Warner Brothers. Solly found Nicky Adams, brought him out here. Nick had no place to sleep, and my dad's buddy and he, another cop, one of them bought him a mattress, got him a little rental, and Nick Adams came to the house. We had dinner, and my mom was a beautiful woman, and Solly, he wanted a screen tester. My dad said, no way. Somehow, by a fluke, I think I even mentioned it to you, I started with a Playboy magazine ad that I ended up in this world. But my dad wanted me to be an accountant or a dentist. And
Ooh, those are two tough professions.
oh yeah, I barely in college and somehow by happenstance, and I believe it's meant to be because I have the right brain, left brain, but the artist part of it is so much more satisfying for me. But once the bug bit me, it never lets go.
Well, tell me a little bit more about this Nick Adams story. So, did you meet Nick Adams when he was a little kid or
And
a young
when I
kid?
was a little kid, yeah, I met him. He sat at my dinner table. It's before it all happened for him because Solly at Warner Brothers put him under contract. And that was the days of Steve McQueen and all those guys were contract
Sure.
players over at Warner Brothers. So then Nicky got one thing led to the next, and then I think it was He was in a James Cagney movie.
Yeah, he was in Mr. Roberts.
That's the one.
Yeah, he plays one of the sailors in a very, very good movie. In fact, the same year, I think he's also in Rebel Without a Cause.
He is. He is. Yeah, he was real raw. And then he got that series that was done to he and Steve McQueen for, I think it was Johnny Yuma he played.
Johnny Yuma. I
Yeah.
know the song. Johnny Yuma was a
Uh,
rebel.
yeah, so I go, I was Mickey Mouse Club, those shows.
Oh, you guys are contemporaries. So you watched the same shows I did. You probably watched Texas John Slaughter and the Swamp Fox and all those great Disney shows.
Oh, yeah, the first movies I saw at that Royal Theater were, I think, War of the Worlds was the first movie I ever saw.
Oh, great movie.
Yeah, unbelievable and scary back then. Those movies were very scary. And then on the riverbed is where they shot the thing, and
Oh no,
that
you mean them about the giant ants.
them. I lived on the street where that underground thing goes into the
Oh
sewer, goes
sure,
into
you're
the
talking
river.
about a movie. Not only have I seen it 12,000 times, but it was
Yeah.
the first article I ever wrote for Cinefantastic magazine. I interviewed the writer Ted Sherderman and I interviewed the director Gordon Douglas. And they told
Wow.
me all about the making of that movie.
Wow.
Ted Sherderman was a working screenwriter in Hollywood. I interviewed him for my first book. I did a book called Combat Films, all about World War II movies. And I was sitting there talking to him about a Jeffrey Hunter movie called Hell to Eternity. I
I
don't know if
remember it.
you remember that one. Sure,
Yes.
about he was raised by Japanese Americans. And during the course of my interview with him, he said that kind of reminded me of what I did with them. Now, for me to hear that was just knocked me off my seat because those were in the days before the internet. You'd have to go down to the Academy Library in Beverly Hills and look up people's credits because there was no IMDb. So I pitched the idea of a story on them, and then we got it done. It's funny right now. Michael Giacchino, who's a top composer in Hollywood, is rebooting that movie.
You're kidding me.
They're going to do another Them. And the problem, one thing I will say, and it's kind of hard for me to accept remakes because generally they're awful. But
Yeah.
one thing I think they will be able to improve on them will be the effects. Because Warner's didn't put a lot of money into the effects. But although the ants in them are pretty scary looking,
Oh, and as a
yeah.
kid, I lived on a street called Oris Street, which is now a freeway, and I saw the first freeway go in down here. So basically, I'm prehistoric in this business.
Well, you look pretty good.
But
So
the
what
TV
was your?
set, our TV sets were, the screen was this big, and it was
Oh no.
all a box, furniture. And but where my bedroom is, that movie Them freaked me out so much as a kid. My bedroom was basically sitting on top of one of those tunnels. The riverbed was down at the end of the street. So those scary house of wax, those movies, Frankenstein, that
You
was
you were probably a lot braver than I was because I used to go to the horror movies and I have to sit in the lobby. My friends were a lot braver than me. I could handle the science fiction movies,
yeah.
The Day the Earth Stood Still, Forbidden Planet, The Blob, all that kind of stuff. But the horror stuff, I was an only child, so I had a big imagination. So you meet Nick Adams, he comes to the dinner table. What was your next brush with show business?
Um, Actually, all the way out to I know in high school, the big night out with the proms and all that stuff, we'd six of us or eight of us would rent a limousine and go to the Egyptian Theater or to the Pantages and watch openings back then, which were, those were when we were buying reserve seats with numbers on them. But it didn't start for me until, it wasn't, it never crossed my mind. I didn't take drama in school. I know no acting classes. And I remember, um, oh, oh, you dropped off the planet. There you
I'm
are.
just getting some water here.
The, uh, I was in a college insurance program, and my partner was Mike Warren, who played basketball at UCLA,
Sure, of course.
and uh, and Jim Brown. We all used to kind of hang out together, and we had an office where it was an advertising business that basically I started up, and Mike was a partner of mine. And in the office one day, Mike got a role on Jack Nicholson's Drive, he said, called movie, playing basketball. It was about basketball players. Mike's manager came into our office and she'd asked me if I ever done any modeling. And I said no. She said, I have a job available tonight as a model at the Playboy Mansion. And she said, are you interested? And she said, they'll pay you $600. I said, what do I have to do? She goes, you have to sit there in a Roman toga. It's going to be a centerfold for Playboy. And you're going to have two naked girls pouring, putting grapes in your mouth and pouring wine in a chalice, and they're going to be on your lap. And I said, and they're going to pay me to do that? So that was, by the way, when the thing came out, the staple was right in the middle of my head. But then I met a lady that was going to an acting class, and she invited me to the acting class. And the guy brought me up there, and I sat down, and that's when since I taught acting later in the years, I warned my students, be careful, this business bites you in the ass, it will not let go. And I loved it. It was love at first sight.
What did you, since you, it's very difficult to actually make money right away. What kind of are some of the jobs you had to do to stay floating?
What was I doing? I know that I had to, I wasn't being subsidized by my father. He said I'd be a bum if I went in that industry. And God rest his soul. When I did my first feature, I actually produced it and I was in it. And we got Wilford Brimley in the piece. My father, after the screening, came up and whispered in my ear. He said, "Wow, you've made it." Well, in this business, you haven't made it. That's for sure. I invested money in it. And um, but your question was again is, oh, how did I, you know what?
By the
Paying
way,
bills
I'm gonna
was
just
spike, and it's part-time jobs working in a gas station that my dad knew a guy, and it was tough. And I remember I lived on Orange Drive, right behind at the time, the Grumman's Chinese Theater, and I was going to the acting class, and I got close to the acting coach. And by the way, in that acting class, Terry Garr was sitting on my left, and what's her name, who married, I think it was Bogdanovich, and she ran Paramount Studio, Sherry
Mary
Lansing.
Lansing, sure.
She was a student. She was one of the sweetest girls I ever met. And Terry was, Terry was Terry.
I worked with Terry. She is a character.
Oh, she was a character, but they were, trying to work their way up the ladder.
By the way, I put a picture up here of the movie Jackals, which I believe is your first producing credit,
Number one.
number one. But it has an alternative title, American Justice. Was it
Yeah,
also?
well, actually, it was Jackals. Because that's what the movie's about. It's about the weak being preyed upon, uh, and timely now, but border crossings, uh, and then made a deal with it came this close, Steve, to getting Universal to distribute the picture, and I made it for about 2.8 million. I raised the money through a hobby of mine, antique gun collector and a gun show. I met a rich German industrialist. His whole one rule: you rip me off, he said, I'll put you in behind lawyers for the rest of your life. But we brought it in on time. Wilford signed on for a week. And when I got back home here, I got a letter from Wilford with an airplane ticket unused in it and a note: son, keep doing what you're doing. So to get the respect of guys like that back then, because he and Bobby Duvall, they would. I loved the Bruce Beresford film where Duvall was in it. Golly, what was it called? Uh, anyway, I can't
Tender
think of
Mercies? No, no.
it.
Oh, Tender Mercies. There you go.
Very good. That's one of my favorite films of all time. And I remember Brimley telling me that Duvall set up his own shots, and they told Beresford basically, "Go sit in the corner. We're not listening to you." And these were tough guys. We were doing a scene in this movie Jackals in a morgue, and uh,
I just broke a cardinal rule. I didn't turn off my cell phone.
oh yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'm going to do the same. I don't need that disruption.
Those little things. Yeah, no. So
Uh,
these guys were tough guys. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and we were doing a scene in the morgue, and the director wanted Brimley to unzip the body bag that was one of the little Hispanic girls the illegals coming across the border that was murdered by the sheriff, which was played by Gerald McRaney, and the sheriff of all sheriffs was Brimley. And he looked at the director and he goes, "Why would I do that?" And then he looked at me and he realized I'm going, there goes the budget. Brimley's walking out. He's going to quit. But they were, they called them suits. They didn't respect the director unless they knew what they were doing. And I mean, they were rebels. But Tender Mercies, Duvall, I mean, he never had acting training in his life.
One of the things I learned working on film sets over the years is respect is so critical to literally everybody on that set, from the person who's carrying the water bottles around to the head producer. Once you disrespect one person, it's the end. It creates a bad feeling. I get the impression that you, who have been so involved in filmmaking for so long on many levels, you bring that respect to everybody.
Well, I've been around it for a long time. I worked on a movie with Schwarzenegger, was it Collateral Damage, I think it was called,
Right.
and I looked around and I would see, I mean, he had a mobile gym. He had 85 cappuccino machines, everybody sitting around doing nothing, and everybody grumpy and humility out the window. For me, it's the most important person on a movie set is the craft service guy. I would always tell them, keep this cast fed, bring them a warm washcloth, after they're done with shooting. And everybody was happy. And at the end of the show, all the crew, all the cast, we all gathered and we bought the guy a Nikon camera. And I've just learned, it goes a long way. I was raised, I'm old-fashioned Italian. My aunt, my uncle are my role models. And humility, uh, there's such a waste in this business. And I love guerrilla filmmaking. Believe me, and I mean this sincerely, because I've been around the business a long time, but I'd rather be out there, finding a way to get a shot down in LA where I'm not supposed to be shooting, rather than being on a sound stage closed in by all these windows, watching Arnold. It was like running an empire, guerrilla filmmaking. And Ted McGinley, who's been in the business a long time, forever. He's in Silent Thunder, as you saw, and in Blowing Smoke, another one. And he said he's never had so much fun, and he's never talked about one thing he's done all the way back to Happy Days and Up that he enjoyed doing. This is the first project he said he's ever enjoyed being part of.
This movie that you got the German industrials to finance, did you do okay financially on the picture?
Yeah, we made our money back. You call that okay?
That
And
that is not only okay, that's a huge victory in our business.
it is, and it's still playing somewhere. And right now, I've got a great relationship with our distributor that distributed Cartel War, and they're on their own now. They started a new company called Blue Harbor, and I've got a nice relationship with them. And I'd like to bring that picture back because it's timeless. And Cartel War, that was made 12 years ago because of COVID. Uh, it had run its course, and COVID brought it back. And because the studios weren't making new shows, so they needed product, and they brought it back, and it did better, and it's still going. They're bringing it back again. It's on YouTube right now, and
Well,
uh,
I watched it the other night. So I think I told you in my my text to you that I started watching Cartel War in Portuguese. And I'm about 40 minutes in, and I suddenly realized this can't be Jack's movie. There's nobody in it. They're all speaking Portuguese. And then I
yeah,
realized I had bumped into the wrong Cartel War. And then, of course,
yeah.
and I'm looking at this actor in Cartel War, the other one, and I'm saying it looks a little bit like you, but it's not you. So then I came across this one, and talk about guerrilla filmmaking. This is all shot in LA, and normally it probably costs $10 million to shoot on the streets of LA. You shot this guerrilla, didn't you?
Yeah, totally guerrilla. I'll tell you, the budget was $450,000, and everybody thought I spent 3 or 4 million on that film. I don't know. I'm fearless that way. Unless they're going to put me in jail, then I'd get scared. But we shot in a riverbed, which the Queen Mary, and I had worked in the world of basketball, and I happened to know, and I put together a game. It was a down in Long Beach called the Long Beach Jam. They became the minor league club to I think the Clippers at the time. And I had Rodman on my team. That was an experience. And
I'm sure that was.
so, but I had put the police department together with the fire department. In minor league basketball, it's a big circus. So I had them play each other. We were shooting a scene from Cartel War down on the Redondo Beach, right on the pier. not the pier, right in the breakwater there. And all of a sudden, here comes the fire department, the film department, and they wanted to see the permit. And I said, well, I tried the quick one. I said, we're a student project. And they look and they go, well, that's a pretty big student project. Well, the fireman was on that basketball floor that I recruited, put his arm around me. He said, it takes 6 months to get a permit to shoot down here. He put his arm, he said, come on, let me walk you up to City Hall. 2 hours later, I was out with Coast Guard helicopters flying over the boat that we were on. So I've gotten away. They'll probably come and get me now. But
Well, this city has to do a lot of rethinking because there's too many productions leaving town.
yeah,
And the headline in today's paper, where Mayor Bass says that she's going to try to make it easier for filmmaking. Well, we'll believe that when we see it. But this state is in trouble. I hate to sound political, but do we really need a bullet train to get to Northern California for $40 billion? I
yeah,
mean, that to me is the biggest boondoggle in the history. We could use that money in the film business to pay some of those tax credits.
yeah.
Because I don't want to go to New Mexico or Louisiana or Texas to shoot. I'd rather shoot here.
Yeah, well, the German industrialists that financed American Justice, I never finished that. Anyway, he jumped in because he got a $300,000 tax credit right off the top, which he took off of his taxes. I mean, he was a wealthy, wealthy man. But going back to how the distributor that I had called jackals, he called it American Justice, justice from the barrel of a gun. I said, oh, that's not going to sell. But that's the way he wanted to sell the movie. The Europeans put it out as jackals.
Mm.
So listen, once you turn it over to distributors, it gets real tough. They take the picture, and if you haven't got your contract right, they say thank you, goodbye.
It's
And
so funny because being a writer and trying to get things sold, and there's pitfalls at every step. You finally get your movie made, and
yeah,
it's just beginning its journey because now you have to get it distributed, and
yeah,
it's dangerous. I want to put up some of the cartel cast because I thought you had some very interesting actors. This actress who played the lead female. I guess
Mercedes Rito.
exactly.
Oh, she played the Black
She
Widow.
she played the Black Widow. She was just amazing and tantalizing and like a true Black Widow. Where did you find her?
She we the co-director and co-writer, uh,
Troy.
editor Troy, who's now passed away. They had a small office over at Samuel Goldwyn at the time. So we used that, and she came in, and I went, "Whoa, where's this coming from?" And they either loved her in screenings, and some thought, well, she looked like she was stoned the entire film. But her approach, when she scared me one day, I thought, oh, she's gone cuckoo. She came out of a couple people came down and said, hey, she's freaking out upstairs in her bedroom. I went, what do you mean? She's jumping up and down on the bed. And so she came out. I looked at her and I said, Mercedes, are you okay? And she goes, why? And she goes, I'm in character. So her approach was that. And but she was fun to work with. She's from Venezuela. And I just thought she was special. I look for people. To me, I'm really all about if you feel your right role, then people can feel it. And she was, immersed in her role.
For the listeners and viewers who don't know the film Cartel War, she is the co-head of a drug organization, and the head of the organization is this gentleman right here. He was very powerful too.
Yeah, Roberto Sanchez.
Roberto Sanchez,
Yeah,
exactly. And what I liked about the movie were the characters, and of course, that's the key to success in so many movies.
yeah.
If you don't like the characters, here's another picture of her. She looks pretty
Oh,
pretty. That's her, isn't that? Yeah, that's
is that her?
is that her or is
I don't
maybe
think so.
maybe that's not her.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that's somebody that's somebody in
All right.
cartel work, definitely.
Whoever that is has got it going on in her eyes.
Let, let's now I watched Silent Thunder
Mhm.
last night, and I have to tell you, for those of you who don't know this movie, it is available. You can pick it up on, is it's Prime, right? It's on Prime.
Prime and Tubi.
Prime and Tubi. It is a hoot and a holler. As I said at the top of the show, it's a horror western with a great deal of atmosphere. And Jack has an interesting character. He's playing an ex, or actually a bank robber who's been captured by Ted McGinley's sheriff or marshal, and plays Ted McGinley plays Marshal Spencer Sunday. And this gentleman next to Jack in the poster, I believe, is Jonathan Stoddard, who played Quinn. And there are some beautiful ladies in this show. And I think my only my only bone of contention in the movie is that two of your ladies look so much alike. I wasn't quite sure who was who, because I know one's name is Mary, and I think one's name is Abigail. And there are these five prostitutes who are captured
Yeah.
by these dog monsters that are very creepy.
Yeah.
Tell me how this project came to you.
Well, uh, Isaac, the director writer, uh, horror films were making money, and it seems like, and in my opinion, those have a chance to get in on the big screen. And I was a big fan of X. Was it X with Mia Goth and uh, the writer's really hot, but. And Isaac is like Quentin Tarantino. He's a throwback, old soul, very old soul. And he loved Westerns, and so did I. But this one's like an old-fashioned Western. In fact, some of the music is right at the black and white sequence. And Isaac's a big fan of Quentin's. That's a whole other story, and about Quentin and my connection to him. But we wanted something that I knew we could possibly shoot within budget, and something that I thought might be easier to sell because of the horror element. And so Isaac put it together, and the fact
Where did you first meet Isaac?
Isaac and I didn't hit it off first time I met him. I was an actor. Do you remember Alan Vint, Jesse Vint, the Vint brothers?
Sure. They were in that famous movie. Was it Macon County Line?
Macon County Line, both of them. Yes, Jesse became a friend of mine, and Jesse is a great actor. He's got a fuse about this long. He gets himself in trouble at times, and but he and I are friends. And he had done a very low budget film for Isaac up in Seattle. That's actually playing, I think. And anyway,
By the way, I should tell the listeners and viewers that we're talking about Isaac Medeiros, who's the director, writer, editor of Silent Thunder.
yeah, yeah. So he came over. Jesse wanted me to look at his movie, and I watched it, and I thought it was terrible. And I'm in my living room. It's being screened right here, and he's enjoying it more than anybody else. And I thought, I've been in that trap before. What do I tell this guy when this thing is over? And he was.
What do you tell him?
I try to find something I like. Hey, that was great photography, that one scene. the So he was ambitious. He didn't have any money. He was living with a friend of his. He was born in Alaska, a town of 65 people, and like Quentin, all they did was watch movies, and they're walking encyclopedia of old films, and very intelligent. And but he was a survivor, but at the same time he was embellishing things. And oh yeah, I want you to come do this, Jack. Come do that. I met him over at where did Peter Duell and all those guys used to hang out, where they play pool over there on Santa Monica Boulevard, famous spot. Anyway, I got tired. He wanted to cast me in something. I went, nah, this guy's not for real. So we kind of split off, and then we came together in a very strange way. He had a film called Blowing Smoke, which we just cut a deal on. It's going to be released next month, streaming, and it's got Ted in it, and Stock.
Are you involved in this film as well, Jack?
Yeah, I produced it, and I'm in it. I've got a great scene. It kind of turned my confidence around as an actor. I had the wrong kind of training. If you're going to study acting, you don't want to do it in LA because they're all spin-offs of the great teachers that were in New York, Sandy Meisner and Uta Hagen and Stella Adler. And then it's one of my favorite actors right now who's exploding is John Bernthal. He got fed up with LA acting coaches. So he went to Russia, where it started. And then it came through, and then Brando turned it all around with the Chekhov, Stanislavski stuff. And when I'm passionate about something, I want to get down. I want to divide it by two, divide that by two, divide. I want to know what the nuclear button is inside of something. Because I guess I was just lazy, I wanted to be an actor. I went to all the wrong acting schools. It was all let it happen, listen, let it happen. The inner game of tennis, go on a tennis court, put a racket in your hand, trust you can hit a tennis ball. Baloney. And Isaac, being a student of all films, got me to watch Jack Nicholson in Five Easy Pieces recently. And I said, man, I got to analyze this. So I've uncovered a lot of secrets for myself to make it simple. And Blowing Smoke is the first time I've gotten respect as an actor.
Hmm.
And in this last one here, I'm real proud of this work right here. I finally sat back and went, I'm comfortable. You know, I satisfied myself. And I've broken it down to 5 easy steps. And I've gone to some acting schools out here recently to see what's going on, friends of mine. When you put 40 people in a class, it's about making money. And I had 40 people in a class. That's how I met Tarantino. But man, I wouldn't let anybody sit down unless I got them to do something right in the scene. And I sitting in these classes now, and that I see these teachers going, "Great job," and I go, "That's a terrible job." But they got to pass 40 people through. And
What was your first impression of Quentin Tarantino?
James Best, who was on Dukes of Hazzard, played Roscoe P. Coltrane, and who goes back to Sammy Fuller movies.
Oh,
And
it's in one of my, he's in two very powerful Twilight Zone episodes.
oh yeah, in fact, he's the first guy to play a drug addict, on television. And Jimmy became a very good friend of mine, like family. But man, he was a wacko, and in a great way. And uh, he was an orphan child, gone to New York, slept on the mattresses in a friend's apartment, and uh, ended up being best friends with Burt Reynolds. And uh, my wife, Jeannie, former Miss Texas, 3 TV series, she was auditioning for Daisy Duke in Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh,
Down to the last two. Kathy got the role, but they liked Jeannie so much they cast her in an opening episode. So she went to I think they shot in Atlanta, and Jeannie met Jimmy. Jimmy found out that I had the acting schools here. We were in my living room with about 8 of us students doing our own thing, no teacher. And so she invited Jimmy to come see the class when they got back from Atlanta, which he did. Next morning, I got a phone call from Jimmy. He said, "Hey, let's put an acting school together." He goes, "I'll teach. You run it." Next thing you know, we take an ad in the trades. Burt Reynolds endorses it, and I'm looking at interviewing 100 people, and so many that I had to set up an advanced, intermediate, and beginning class. And
what was the most you would have in one class?
23, 24,
23.
25.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was hard.
Sure.
Because everybody works, not like these workshops where you audition a scene and you don't work for 3 months. It doesn't work, in my opinion. And Jimmy was big on camera. All those old guys, they knew where the camera, what it was looking at. I mean, literally, I could take you right now and just drop my eyes up here, and on a big screen, the whole world's going to look at what I'm looking at. So it's very disciplined. On stage, your stage is this big. On camera, it might be here. Sergio Leone shot here. I was in Django Unchained, and Quentin said, "I'm going to do a spaghetti western shot on you." I played an outlaw coming out of a bar with a glass of beer. He said, "I'm going to do one of these, zoom into right here on you." And but knowing camera, I know my stage is this big. And with just eye movements, me looking from here to you, being curious about what's on this desk, and then just peeking at you, knowing I'm talking to you. If I know who you are, I like to do one word. Let's say I've known you, I've just met you, 2 weeks ago. But let's say you're somebody I've known 10 years, and I've learned that you're a kind guy. No matter, even when you're a jerk, you're still very kind. So if I'm looking here and I look to you and I go, I'm talking to a guy who's very kind, but I've got to say something that's not nice to you, that I can connect to that. That to me is what acting is all about. Is I got a job as an actor, tell a story. And once I know what the story is, now I got to tell my story as an actor, and I'm playing somebody else, a character, but I'm not him. I've got to make him filter through me. And so when I go the story that he's telling and he's in this situation, I've got to go, how can I get into that situation personally so I can feel it and connect to it? For example, I was driving down Olive the other day in Burbank, and there was a billboard, and it was these attorneys we call ambulance chasers. They're on TV. Hold on, I'm doing a podcast. I'll be right with you. The So I go ambulance chaser. All I have to do now is look down if I'm doing a scene with you, no matter what the scene calls for, based on what I've put together. I go, Steve, I really like you, but you're an ambulance chaser. So now I've got an attitude about you're a creep, a lovable creep. But the situation says I got to fire a lovable creep. That guy may be in a whole different set of circumstances. But if this guy, the character, is tortured in letting a friend of his go, I go, we've been friends for years, but I don't like what you do.
So,
That,
so,
go ahead.
so Tarantino obviously comes to your class.
So he comes to my class. He's in the parking lot. He comes up. He wanders into the room, and everything is shaking and vibrating, and there was something about him. My wife recognized it too because she was helping bring people in. And I went, this guy's got, and nobody would take him in town. I think he dropped out of school in seventh grade, and his mom locked him in his room and said, watch TV shows if that's what you want to do. And so he comes in, and I went, I could see this guy on Johnny Carson one day. Johnny was at the time still there, or Jay Leno. And so he came to class, he joined. I used to say Quentin, and I'm not afraid to say this now because he reminded me of it. I used to say, you got to take a bath if you come into class. He had no car, and he would go across the street to a little restaurant we call Patty's in Toluca Lake, which it's really deep in his psyche because he shot the last one with Brad Pitt and Leo. A
Oh,
lot of
sure.
it.
Once upon a time in Hollywood. Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
And
Patty's is still there. Yeah.
yeah, Bob's Big Boy was his hangout. And in fact, he had called me to meet him to tell me, he said, I got three things I got to tell you, three light bulbs that went off. He hadn't reached out to me. It's disappointing. 35 years it took him to reach out. And I need to sit down with him one more time and say, hey, Quentin, I love you. All the success in the world. And there's a story to that too, I think I talked to you about. But anyway, we met at across the street from Bob's Big Boy. And this is his town. And he lived in my workshop. He couldn't get the bus back, so I gave him the keys. And he'd sleep on the prop mattresses. And then he'd go across the street and take a sith bath. Then he'd catch a bus to Hollywood, and from Hollywood to LA, and watch 2 movies a day. And I went, this is an interesting dude. And his hands would move. I used to make him wear white dusting gloves and sit on his hands because you got to match. I can't be smoking a cigarette, eating a candy bar, and then on the other side of the scene, now I'm sucking on a sucker, drinking a glass of beer. It doesn't work. So I made a big mistake, but I want to tell him. I figured out what I should have told him. After we met, and he told me the three reasons why he wanted to meet with me, I was teaching privately. I'm in a big give back mode now, and six, seven people. They come to the house, and uh, anyway, I go down there. I meet with him, and let me go to the three light bulbs story. He said, number one, I came to you to study acting, and he said, but the way you taught, you would direct. That was a direct influence from Jimmy Best because he was all about camera. And so I would direct the scenes. And and uh, and he said, then you made us write our own scenes for class. So I hooked him up with a partner. He had seen a Chayefsky movie and wrote the scene. And his partner said, you write better than Patty. He goes, light bulb number one, acting, light bulb number two, directing, light bulb number three. And he goes, I owe a lot to you why I'm in this business, which made my head go, whoa, thank you. You're a living legend. But I made a mistake. One of the girls was Armenian in this little workshop I was running to give back to. And in Glendale, which is little Armenia, she did the morning show. She wanted me on. First question, Tarantino, my connection. And I opened it up by saying, well, he wasn't a very good actor, but he's a living, it was a big compliment I was paying him. He found out that I said he wasn't a very good actor. He called me and called me out and said, why would you say that? You used to tell me I did a good job. And I wasn't thinking, I was on the defensive. And I thought, wait a second, you don't come to me to learn and be good. My job is to make you better. That's how I should have answered the question. So I don't know if he still holds that grudge or not, but I need one more sit down with Quentin.
Sure, sure. We're all hoping, probably won't do it, but we're all hoping Amy Pascal calls him up and says, direct the next James Bond movie, which would probably propel the series into the stratosphere if they were smart. I don't
Yeah.
know if Quentin would do it, but it certainly would be a great opportunity for him.
Well, you can't believe how profound that whole thing is to me. I mean, to see a guy that couldn't pay me, I'd give him free tuition, sleeping in my workshop, telling him to take a bath to a rock star,
Oh
you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, he. It's interesting because being a writer myself, I've studied his scripts, and he has a very great gift of putting words in people's mouths that not only are terrific, but they're startlingly terrific. I mean that the dialogue in Pulp Fiction, some of the things in all of his films is really good. Are you going to bring your director Isaac into the room with
And
us?
that was him that just peeked in, and I
Why
told
don't
him
we why don't we bring him in, talk a little bit more
Isaac,
about.
he idolizes Quentin. I mean, Quentin can do no wrong. And
I had one encounter with Quentin. I was standing in line at the Village Theater in Westwood to see Terry Malick's movie, The Thin Red Line.
oh, I went down there and saw it too in line. I was probably in line with you.
Yeah, well, four people in front of me was Quentin Tarantino.
I'll be
And at
darned.
that moment, I had the rights to remake a great World War II movie from the 40s, you'll remember, called A Walk in the Sun.
I do.
Richard Conte, Dana Andrews. And I
Wow, you
walked up
make
to him. I said, I'd be interested in talking to you about doing this remake. And he said, well, I've got my own World War II movie. And of course, he was talking about Inglourious Bastards, which he hadn't written yet. But he said, but you should talk to Harvey Keitel. I said, well, why should I talk to Harvey Keitel? That's his favorite movie. But I wasn't going to get it launched with Harvey Keitel. And my experience, by the way, in bringing my remake to the attention of somebody whose favorite is the original, they always hate the remake. They always hate it. But it's
yeah.
somewhere on the burner. I'll be able to take.
I loved Thin Red Line, and Nick Nolte was in there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Nick Nolte was great. Do you know Nick?
No, I just was a fan of Rich Man, Poor Man. There have been a few launches, people I think that changed the industry. Dustin Hoffman changed it with The Graduate, making character actors leading men, and Nick made television a launching pad to go to the movies. Because back then, if you were a star in television, you were the kiss of death to do feature films.
You wonder about that because it goes all the way back to Jim Garner and Steve McQueen and Nick Adams. They all did television, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Funny and Isaac.
Here comes Isaac. Hi, Isaac.
Hey, boss, how you doing?
Let's
Have him
get you
pull up a
seated.
chair here.
Pull up a
Hey,
chair.
how's
I
it
was
going?
I was telling Jack how much I enjoyed your movie last night. I watched it.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm a big Western fan. The sun rises and sets on the Searchers and Rio Bravo for me.
Oh, I
Uh,
love both those pictures.
but I thought you did a really nice job just setting the characters. I thought that, and I'm gonna put up some of those faces because I want to talk a little bit about these actors. Um, let's see if I can find them. Yeah, first of all, Ted. I'm looking at Ted McGinley. And I keep seeing Dabney Coleman. It's they have a something about Ted McGinley and Dabney Coleman. They're very they favor one another. But I thought Ted was just terrific.
Yeah, it's
Now, how
fantastic.
did you convince him to do this role? Was it a journey?
Jack knew his wife, Gigi Rice. They go back a long way. They did a picture called "Gift from Heaven" back in the '90s, I believe. And when we were making a picture before this called "Blowing Smoke," we were tossing some names around, and Gigi and then Jack mentioned Ted, and he agreed to do the picture, which was very cool. And so when it came time to do this one, we'd been talking about doing a movie together for a while, and I sent him the script, and I think he said he was in the next day. He just
Oh,
loved the
that's
character.
so.
Yeah.
Jack was telling me that you're very versed in film history. Are there some westerns that you consider the most influential for you as a filmmaker?
McCabe and Mrs. Miller is probably my favorite. I don't know if you've seen that one, but I love that film.
That's a Robert Altman movie, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir,
Yes,
it is. Oh, it's a perfect picture. It's kind of a revisionist Western. Love that one. Rio Bravo and The Searchers as well. My Darling Clementine, anything by John Ford. Uh,
sure,
I like Quentin's pictures a lot. They're wonderful Westerns. Anything by Peck and Paw, Wild Bunch, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, Ride the High Country. Those are all fantastic. And I really like they did a little string of pictures they shot up in Lone Pine in the 50s that Bud Buddicker made. Ride Lonesome was one of them. Had Jimmy Best, Randolph Scott, James Coburn. Wonderful little set of movies that they made up there. So
sure, sure.
those were influential because they didn't have huge budgets and they were kind of small and contained and they're all shot up there in the Alabama hills. So they're very cool movies.
Well, if you're trying to do a movie on a budget these days, which of course is paramount because nobody's giving you $20 million off the try, it just doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, I
No.
guess shooting outdoors, not having to build a lot of sets. I think in this movie, the only set I could see was the way station.
Yes,
That
sir.
was an interior. By the way, what part of I assume this was shot in California, correct?
No, no, sir. We
Oh,
shot in Arizona.
oh,
Yeah, that love the vistas out there. They're just beautiful. And when we were getting ready to do the picture, I asked Jack if we could shoot on location, and he was like, "Yeah, if you can find something that works, go for it." So, did two location scouts to Arizona, and we were probably 40, 50 miles outside of Yuma, the old mining town that had been out there forever. And so all the sets were period appropriate. They were like 100, years old. And yeah, it really adds to it because you get a lot of production value without having to build anything, and the sunsets out there are crazy. And yeah, it was a rough shoot. The location was very hard to get to, but
what time of the year were you shooting?
I think we shot in October, November. Yeah, it was the heat had finally died down. It was very cool.
We were out there with scorpions, vultures,
Yeah.
coyotes.
Oh, it was fantastic. You're really cold at night, really hot during the day, and
Now, I was telling Jack that your two leading ladies, who are terrific, by the way, obviously they're two of the five prostitutes, the two of the main ones,
yes,
they
sir.
they favored one another. There were a couple times I wasn't sure who was who. I know that
Double.
Mary, I believe, is the one Quinn hangs out with, right? She's the
Yes, sir.
Jonathan Stoddard's paramour, and she is there on the right, or is she on the left?
No, no, no. So actually, in that photo, you are correct. Mary's played by Laura James.
Right.
She plays Johnny's gal there. In that photo, that's Marie Salamina on the left there. She's an Italian actress, and Cassie Colvin is the one on the right, and she played Amethyst, the sort of the witch the mystical one.
Okay, so that's Amethyst there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Has all those wonderful scenes with Ted. They were really cool together.
Well, one of the things I was telling Jack as well is I was very impressed with the score of the movie. I
Oh,
find that in movies like this, music is so important to add atmosphere. And I thought that, and Miles Ito, I know is your credited composer, there were
yes, sir.
times in the movie I felt it was like almost like a Twilight Zone episode because you were building some very cool atmosphere with this musical score. Was it challenging to get that just right?
No, Miles is a very talented guy. I've known him for a long time, and yeah, Twilight Zone was an influence. I would listen to some of those old recordings by Bernard Herrmann and guys like that, and I was always like, "Oh, that's just wonderful. It really captures the feel." And so that mixed with some of the stuff that Ennio Morricone would do, not in his westerns, but stuff like The Thing, like that kind of influence musically was very cool. And so I would, we talked about that a lot, and then having leaning kind of into some of the stuff that you wouldn't hear in a western, like rock and roll or pop music or things like that. It was it worked for the picture, I think. We're
Sure.
making a weird movie, so might as well go all out on the soundtrack.
How about the gunplay? Was that a challenge? Gunplay always presents its own unique challenges. There's some good gunplay in this movie. Of course, you have to have that in a Western.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, most of the guys, Jack and Ted and a couple of the other guys, they're very familiar around firearms, and so they were very comfortable and knew what they were doing. But everything is in camera. There's no CGI lens flares or anything like that. That's all blanks, and everything that you see, there's not a single frame of CGI or AI or any of that crap in the picture. Every frame is captured in camera,
Sure,
and
sure.
it's fun to see the smoke come out of the barrel when it's on camera. It makes it more exciting for the actors.
Now, Jack told you're the writer, of course, and in trying to come up, I mean, Isaac's the writer, trying to come up with the villains of the piece, these dog creatures. Tell me a little bit about the evolution of what did you start out wanting to have creatures that look like dogs?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the idea was to mix Western with horror and do something kind of spooky on that front. Um, excuse me. As we shot it, it sort of became apparent in my mind that they didn't look exactly like a hermaphroditic creature, and so it'd be more authentic to have them be crazy people that are living in the desert that think they are dogs. Basically, have kind of lost their minds. So I talked to Jack about that, and yeah, that's kind of how that idea evolved. But it was kind of fun. There was a night we were shooting in a cave out in the middle of nowhere, a couple miles from the actual set, and it's like a hole in the mountain, and as he said, there's scorpions and all that kind of stuff. And being out there at 4 o'clock in the morning when there's nobody around for probably 40 or 50 miles and only lit by torches. And you've got Amelia Gray is a great actress hanging from the cave, naked and covered in blood. And Ted is in there. He looks like Indiana Jones. And these dog men are coming into the cave, and the sounds, they had their own language worked out and their primal little way of talking and speaking, and really spooky. I operated camera on the picture, and seeing them come right at you at 4 in the morning in the middle of nowhere with a torch, it was like, oh, that's horrifying. Don't be tripping. Yeah, it's very, very spooky.
You know what's fun, Steve, about that kind of filmmaking too is when we would wrap any particular day, whether you were acting in the movie or you were directing the movie, no matter what it was, we would all pitch in and pull cable, and it was a team play, total team play. And I'm a big believer in that. And if it's all about you, if I make it all about me and it's a big hit, what am I gonna celebrate with myself at home by myself? It's so rewarding to see people smiling and happy after climbing mountains out there or fighting scorpions and people loving it. It was like we fought a war. I mean, it wasn't easy out there. We had our
Filmmaking is definitely fighting a war, having done it and, hopefully continuing to do it very shortly. I'm tired of being in the development tower, that little white tower. I need to get out in the dirt with you guys and just get dirty. And I love Western. The first movie I ever worked on, I started my career being a publicist on films. I was assigned to an Alan Rudolph thriller shooting in Wyoming called Endangered Species. So Robert Urich, Joe Beth Williams, Hoyt Axton. It's a crazy story that these mercenaries are testing germ warfare on cows. So the sheriff keeps going out to the prairie and finding these mutilated cows with no footprints around them. So they think it's aliens or devil cults. And but I remember just hanging out with the wranglers and hearing the stories about when all the studios had big wrangling operations on every lot, with all the rolling stock and the horses and everything. And of course, all that went away, and it's sad. The western towns are gone.
There's one
Uh,
up in Northern California still, Bodie, up by the border. That's
and
still
then,
there.
and then, of course, you go out to Old Tucson and you can shoot in Old Tucson, which is kind of fun. Well,
Absolutely.
guys, I want to recommend Silent Thunder to our viewers and listeners. It's a lot of fun. You can find it on Tubi or Prime, as Jack said.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Definitely. And now let me ask you guys a question. You guys have formed a nice little team now. You've done 2 pictures. What's next?
Well, we got a couple ideas in the hopper. We've been kicking some stuff around.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to have three, streaming at the same time. Smoke's coming out, and Cartel War is streaming again. Um, uh, and also, if you don't mind, I give a shout out to our executive producer, who also is in the movie playing the Irving the pimp that is running. You saw him, and with the cigar and the gambler, and it's just by happenstance. He's my neighbor, lives 2 doors away. A bag lady threw a rock through the back window of his Tesla. He ends up at my house. He finds out I'm Tumbleweed Productions. Next thing you know, he's my partner. He's a big driving force in this whole process. And he's got the label of executive producer. And Ted was so generous and with his time. And but
To answer your question, we're going to do a Roger Corman style exploitation movie about strippers from outer space. It'll be wonderful.
I want to visit that set.
yeah, yeah. In fact, I'll tell you what, when we shoot our next one, come on over and we'll put you in it. You know what? It's ask Isaac. I love doing that. It's
Oh yeah, no, I've done it. I just did something interesting. We took one of our comedy scripts and we took 18 actors and brought them into a Studio City studio, and we recorded a whole movie on audio, and we're going to release it as a podcast,
Oh, be
kind of
done.
like a sound movie. So it's a
Very
way of
cool.
getting something up on their feet, and
Like a
uh,
radio show from back in the day, kind of
it's
like
like
Shadow.
30s radio. This one's a real hoot. It's called Spacemen from Planet Judy. And it's the
Like the
day
Space
all of
Strippers. It's very close.
it's close to your strippers from outer space. This is a case where all the gay men on Earth are kidnapped and brought to the planet Judy, which is named after Judy Garland. It's in another galaxy. And our story is about 2 straight guys who had a trick played on them, and they're dressed in drag, and they are also kidnapped. So it's a story of 2 straight guys trying to get off this planet.
Jack would
And,
love that movie. He'll be in it. No, I'm
yeah. The we've got there's a couple stories that I want to tell. I've been pitching to Isaac, and he's got 3 scripts right now. I call them in the bank in our vault, and really good ones. But if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It's I thought I was done, and I hooked up with him, and here comes the business back again, and I'm more passionate now about it than I ever was. I still, as an actor, have some things to prove to myself.
sure. And Isaac, nice job directing Silent Thunder. Really nice.
Thank you,
Yeah, I
sir.
think you got some great performances there. Everybody, you've been listening and watching Saturday Night at the Movies. I'm your host, Steve Rubin. Our producer is Ben Shrewsbury. If you like the show, please give us a thumbs up. Tell your friends about it. Email us if you'd like to learn more about our show. I certainly take all sorts of suggestions. Steve, Stevejay, Rubin at Gmail. That's Rubin. And then also tune in our other podcast, Tales from Hollywoodland. I co-host that with 2 producers, Julian Schlossberg and Arthur E. Friedman. And we have all sorts of fun shows there as well. On behalf of all of us, Jack, Isaac, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Steve,
Take care.
I'm glad we met.
I am too.